Hello everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had an amazing weekend. As usual, it is Monday. Welcome to Monday. So I have your weekly dose of ghost stories and makeup for you. Just before we get into that today, I do just want to give a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and that is June's Journey. So June's Journey is a hidden object mystery game based in the 1920s. It's completely free to download, and it has some of the best, most beautiful, brightly colored, carefully crafted sceneries in the game. It is so stunning. So I usually at night, maybe like an hour before I go to bed, I will scroll through social media and I will still like be replying to comments and all this kind of stuff. So I've kind of replaced that with this game, and it's given me a chance to kind of wind down and be a little bit calmer. The game is very lightly challenging. It's not like you have to rush or feel intense or anything like that. It's a very calming, relaxing game, and I feel like you guys would love it. It's a murder mystery kind of situations, and let me tell you, from the beginning of the game, it kind of gets right into that murder mystery. So I think you guys would love it as much as I have as well. I'll leave a link below in the description box for you to go and check it out. Okay, so I am sweating, I am boiling hot. I hope you can't hear the fan that's on in the background. It's behind my mic. It's so hot here in the UK at the moment. It's ridiculous. It's really early in the morning and it is still boiling hot. So I'm sweating on my face here. I've done my foundation already to try and so I can take like a slow process. But it is hot. So today's makeup theme, I kind of got like a little bit of inspiration from June's Journey, the sponsor, and I thought 1920s, let's go back and let's do like when radium was a thing in makeup and skincare. Radium was a highly toxic ingredient that people were putting in skincare and makeup because it gave off like this luminous glow. They thought if radium can glow, then so can our skin. And people ended up getting quite severe radium poisoning. And as much as it's quite an intense thing, I thought I'll do a look based around radium poisoning. Okay. As always, I'll link all the products below so you can check those out. Yeah, you can send your ghost stories right here. Ghost stories, weird experiences. That's it. Okay, let's get straight into it. I need to get out this room. Our first story today is called My Sister's Cryptid Experience. Let me start off by saying thank you, Robert. Oh, you're welcome. For inspiring me to get back into makeup again. I was really into it for a couple of years, but I was starting to become disinterested as I found it hard to find any really useful makeup techniques and tricks. And I hated that all makeup videos were on a drag queen level, even for everyday. I developed my own technique, but I did start to lose interest. I love makeup so much again. I finally found my correct foundation shade after years of searching, and my technique has greatly improved. I love that, thank you. It was the summer of 2008. I was a junior leader for the first time at an all-girls camp, in that my younger sister and I had attended since we were little. It's located in the foothills of central Alberta, and the closest town is just over an hour away. My sister, we'll call her Julie, was in the cabin of junior high girls, including her best friend, we'll call her Liz. It was the last night of camp, just after the nightly campfire. My fellow junior leaders and I were doing the rounds to each cabin, saying good night to the girls and making the most of our last night with them. When we arrived at my sister's cabin, I noticed my sister Julie was sitting on top of her bunk in tears, with Liz leaning over and talking to her in urgent whispers. I walked over and asked what was wrong, but Julie just turned away from me. She often would get annoyed by me at this time in life, so I dropped it and moved along. I figured there was probably some bit of drama going on in the cabin, and I knew she had Liz there to comfort her. I later learned why my sister had been crying, and it wasn't out of sadness or anger. I'll start with Liz's story, because she saw this first. Liz was standing on the porch of her cabin, watching everyone move to and from the wash house as they all got ready for bed, and enjoying the peaceful late Canadian summer twilight. As she looked about in the dimming light, she noticed a tall figure standing about 20 meters away in front of a junior lead cabin. Thinking it was one of the junior leaders, she hopped off the porch to go and talk to her. Except, as she approached this figure, she realized it wasn't this junior leader at all. The figure was very tall and lanky, and it had an elongated head, like what you would see on an alien from Star Wars. She slowed down and looked at its face, only to realize that it was staring straight at her, except it was lacking any facial features. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. She immediately turned around and headed back to the cabin. Sometime later, my sister was getting dressed for bed when she looked out the window and noticed there was something in front of it. As she looked closer, she realized she was seeing the same anthropomorphic cryptid type thing, a long body with a featureless face, and it was staring in the window directly at her. At that point, she did what I would have done and scurried right up to her bunk, where she began crying. Now, I'm not religious or superstitious in any way. While I love hearing stories of the paranormal, I'm always highly skeptical and don't usually believe any of it. However, that story still gives me chills to this day, and it was corroborated by two people who I trust deeply, especially my sister. I don't necessarily believe my sister and her friends saw an alien or anything like that, but the memory of the story still haunts me to this day, and I still try to pick apart what it was they saw. You know what scares me more than ghosts and more than, like, I don't know, ghosts, is cryptid creatures. I remember there's, on my way to and from school when my mum used to like drive us to school, there was always this road we would go down, and either side was woods. It was just forest, either side. And I always thought, for some reason, I never saw anything, but for some reason I was like, Bigfoot lives in there, the Yeti, what do other people call him? The Shabadook. No, I'm thinking of Babadook. You know who I mean. And I would be like, oh, I can't look in there, because I would rather see a ghost than some kind of cryptid creature, cryptozoology creature. You know what I'm trying to say. And I feel like they're scarier because they're like, it could just be an animal we don't know about, you know, like Mothman could just be some giant moth. I hate moths anyway. That is terrifying. Thank you so much for that story. That would scar me for life. I would still be crying to this day. If you guys don't know, I don't read these stories before right now. Like, I read them literally as I'm reading them. They get sent to me. My older brother, I'm very, very dyslexic. Like, actually, I'm not being like, I'm dyslexic. I'm really dyslexic. So basically, he takes the stories from the email because they're very much like, it's small writing, and it takes ages for me to read, and it takes hours for me to edit. So he takes the stories and then he cuts them into chunks for me in bigger writing so I can read them. So I literally read them as I see them here, because then he sends them to me. And he made a note on the bottom here, and he put, "Oh my Christ, Robert, this is the first one that scared me. I had to draw it to make it less scary in my head." It's a scary world we live in, hey? So our next story is called The Little Boy. Ghost children, the worst kind. It says, "Hello Robert, I stumbled upon your channel about a month ago now, and I'm so happy I did, thank you. About 8 years ago or so, my family and I lived in a trailer. We were never a fan of it. It always gave us a creepy vibe. We couldn't walk down a hallway without feeling like we were being watched. I didn't like being left home alone. My sister didn't like sleeping alone, so we usually slept in the same room. This one night, we stayed in her room. I slept on the floor and she was on the bed. I don't remember what time it was, but I know it was late, maybe 1 to 2 in the morning, when I felt a tap on my shoulder." Ugh, I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to read this. Okay, I do. I shooed it away, thinking it was my sister. It wasn't. I felt another tap, followed by, "I'm thirsty. Can you get me some milk?" For some reason, I thought it was my little brother. I opened my eyes a little, and it was a small figure. I was still groggy, so I couldn't see clearly. When I finally snapped out of it, I realized it wasn't my brother. He wasn't talking yet, or walking at the time because he was about 1 year old. I froze, threw the blanket over my head and began to pray. I ended up falling back asleep. I always think about that night. P.S. The previous owners had crosses hanging around everywhere, which I didn't know until after we moved out, when my parents finally told me. Which makes me believe things have been going on in that trailer for a while now. Ghost children. Why can't they just leave everyone alone? So we're going for like really very dark, gothic-y, almost like I'm from the 20s, but also from an early 90s rock group, but not a real rock group, like a pop rock group. Our next story is called Hell's Bridge and the Tale of Elias Frisky. Hell's Bridge. I think I'm familiar with Hell's Bridge. Okay, we're going to come back to the eyes and finish that up in a minute. Okay, hi. Oh, just so you guys know, there's a trigger warning on this. Like most of the stories. It says, hi Robert, thank you for doing this series. Oh, my pleasure. Horror and supernatural is my favourite genre, and I've been watching movies and shows like Ghost Adventures, same. Oh, maybe that's why I saw Hell's Bridge. For like half my life, 25 now. I've been watching your makeup channel for a month or so, and you have quickly become my favourite person to watch. Thank you, I appreciate that. You're a genuine and lovely person who's helped me and so many others with our makeup. Thank you for all you do. My absolute pleasure. There's a smaller town north of here where I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, called Rockford. There's a haunted bridge in the middle of the woods of a dirt road aptly named Hell's Bridge. The dirt road winds through the deep woods. This road is Frisky Road. My name is Erin Frisky. Related? Let me preface this by saying we've looked up our family many times and gone through my great-grandparents' records, and no, thankfully, we have no relation to the person this road was named after, Elias Frisky. The tale of Hell's Bridge comes from the mid-1800s. I've copied the story here for you to understand the meaning behind Hell's Bridge. The story says when multiple children went missing, Elias Frisky was asked to watch the rest of the town's children, while the more able-bodied searched for the missing kids. Frisky tied the children together by the waist and told them he was just making sure they didn't lose any more. Then he had them march into the woods. As the children marched through the woods, they soon detected a horrifying stench. Frisky tied the group to a tree and moved a pile of leaves to expose what the stench was: the rotting flesh of the missing children. The tethered children screamed and cried, but Frisky knew their parents were searching for the other missing kids in the opposite direction. Frisky took to butchering the children one by one until he killed them all. He then threw the bodies into the Rogue River and ran deeper into the woods. When the adults on the search party returned to town, it was obvious something was wrong. No Frisky, no children. The townspeople quickly returned to the woods, this time in search of Frisky and the rest of the town's children. The search eventually led them to a newly constructed bridge. Under it, in the icy waters of a rogue river, were multiple bodies, the murdered children. While most were overcome with grief, one man saw a set of footprints going up into the woods. It didn't take long for the man to find Frisky, covered in blood, claiming the devil made him do it. Whether the devil made Frisky do it or not, the townspeople didn't care. They grabbed the rope he used to tie up the children, and instead hung him off the bridge with it. Legend says after he died, the waters swelled, snapped the rope, and took his body away forever. The river may have taken Frisky's body far away, but the evil spirits that supposedly made him kill the children seem to still lurk in the woods and waters around Hell's Bridge. People floating in the intertubes, I don't know what that means, down the Rogue River, claim they feel hands grabbing their feet, trying to pull them into the water. And for the bridge Frisky was hung from, it's since been rebuilt with modern steel and earned the nickname Hell's Bridge. The bridge itself, with its lack of rails, is somewhat scary to cross, but the spirits surrounding it make the bridge particularly terrifying. Explorers claim they've heard children both laughing and screaming, as well as phantom footsteps around the bridge. Supposedly, the bridge becomes scary around midnight with the sounds of dark, demonic laughter. Some even claim that glowing red eyes move through the woods, and a ghost with the same eyes sometimes shows up on the bridge itself. Now, 10 years ago, when us teenagers were bored and had our licenses for the first time and a longer curfew, my older brother and our friends decided to take a trip up to Frisky Road to explore Hell's Bridge. There were 7 of us total, 5 being my brother and his friends, and me and my friend. We took 2 cars. You pull into Frisky Road, this desolate-looking, winding 2-track dirt road through the deep woods. There's a small pull-off at the right where brave ghost enthusiasts like ourselves have carved out over the years as the entrance into the woods to Hell's Bridge. No one else was there. It was nearly midnight in October, maybe 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly about 0 to 4 degrees Celsius. With clear skies and a bright moon, wind was minimal but present. We gathered at the entrance to the woods, pant legs covered in dust from the dirt road that our cars kicked up. We headed in. Don't do it. It took about 10 to 15 minutes of walking on this tiny, winding, upmarked trail through the woods. All the while, the moon and stars poking through the tree tops as they swayed with the wind. There was not a sound beyond ourselves and the woodland floor crunching beneath each of our steps. When we reached the river, we could hear it gurgling over the rocks beneath, before we could see it in the dark. There was the metal bridge, rusty and rickety, spanning across the rogue river beneath it. We looked around, scanning, waiting, listening. Nothing but sounds of the wind slithered between the barren winter trees, and our scattered breath. We crossed one by one. Nothing happened. We heard and saw nothing, other than fog from our breath and the moonlight above. We crossed back again and followed suit back through the winding trail to our cars. Disappointment and relief hang in the air thickly between us. We got back and joked around and poked fun at how scared we were, given we saw or felt or heard no threat of ghosts, hell, or Elias's spirit. We hung around taking pictures to try and capture anything worth talking about, to no avail. With the last bit of our hopes gone, we headed back to our cars, parked several meters away. I went to open the back door to get in with my friend when I noticed something on the side of the door. I turned my phone screen on to illuminate it. This was 2010 era of technology, mind you. And looked closer. I screamed and jumped back, frantically looking around me. My brother and everyone came over to me. I pointed at what I found, leading to a unanimous chorus of "What the fuck?" In the dust on the side of the door were 4 tiny, children-sized handprints, lightly dragged and stamped through the film of the dirt, all across the side of the car. The youngest of us there in our group was 16. There were no other cars around and no other noticeable tire tracks or footprints but our own. We examined the entirety of both cars, hurriedly looking around and feeling watched the whole time. There was a larger man's handprint on the car window of the other car, and more children's handprints around the other side of the same car. Some dragged, some stamped, all very clearly children's, with clear and distinguishable palm lines and everything. I swear we sang a whole nother concert's worth of "What the fuck" back out again to the trees around us. We all got in the cars and drove for 30 minutes back home in terror. None of us have dared go back to Hell's Bridge since. I mean, I would absolutely love to go, but ghost children aren't my thing. That sounds terrifying. That is the ghostly experience that we all want, but secretly don't want, but also do. You know? What a horrible story as well. Just some person saying, "Oh, the devil made me do it." I don't think he did. Or did he? She. Oh, thank you for that story, and thank you for all the detail you put in. That was great. Thank you so much. So our next story is called Native American Folklore Story. Cool. My name is Alanis. I'm such a huge fan of your Makeup Monday ghost story videos. Thank you. I watch them while at work, when I have downtime, and I live for it. You're such a breath of fresh air to the beauty community, and I thoroughly enjoy your content tips and tricks. Thank you so much. Anyway, I have a kind of freaky story. I've never told my family about this, or at least the complete honest truth of the story. So I'm Native American. I hail from the Navajo tribe, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, in the southwestern area of the United States. And many Navajo grandparents, I bet I'm butchering that, sorry, mums, dads, strongly believe in skinwalkers. Oh, I hate these stories. And that at night, bad spirits roam the land. Is it Navajo tribe? I'm going to say Navajo because Navajo sounds like an English person trying to pronounce Navajo. Okay. Which is why many times my Navajo ancestors believed in receiving their blessings at dawn. However, the day is at an end when night falls, and normally do not go out as custom. With modern day society though, this is different. I'm not the most traditional. However, I've always believed in skinwalkers and in Navajo folklore. That is what I was raised to believe. Skinwalkers typically tend to take on the form of coyotes, which is why when we see them, we tend to get a bit jumpy. It is believed that if a coyote crosses your path, you go a completely different direction around that coyote. Coyotes are seen as carriers of bad omens. Another alternative is to bless the path with corn pollen in order to cross. Should you ignore such a warning, you get whatever bad omen or warning they carried. This happened to me. I was driving in the city and I expected no coyotes to be a concern. Although this happened to me twice, this was the second time. The first, I was far out more towards the desert area. The second time, I was in the central part of the city. Of course, I freaked out, stopped in the middle of the road and trying to find a way to get away. But I had already crossed it at this point. I was with my ex-boyfriend at the time. My ex-boyfriend was abusive, and I was afraid it was a sign about us. And I was convinced something bad was going to happen between us. In a blind panic, I called my aunt immediately and notified her of the coyote. She invited me to her home to perform a ceremony, a cleansing, I suppose. She asked me questions, and one was, did you cross the path? And I was afraid of telling her I did, because I knew I wasn't supposed to. So again, in fear and shame, I told her no. And part of me knew I should have revealed the crucial, important detail, because then I may have required a ceremony with a medicine man, a shaman in my culture. I was anxious and afraid after that incident. I couldn't stop stressing, and I felt like I was looking over my shoulder every moment I could, out of sheer paranoia. Even my interactions with my ex were careful. I was afraid something was about to happen. I woke up one morning to numerous missed calls from family members, and they don't normally contact me extremely early in the day. I noticed one from my aunt, so I called her immediately. She picked up, and in tears, she told me my cousin I grew up with had died that morning in a car accident. I moved out of the state I grew up and lived in the year before. Majority of my family was there, and that's where this incident took place. I remember my heart sinking at this information and felt completely guilty. So I told half-truths to my family about it, and now I'm telling you. I know it was kind of a sad story, but it nonetheless haunts me and creeps me out knowing that this happened. Sorry that was so long, I just wanted to be thorough with folklore aspects of it in Navajo beliefs. Thank you so much. That wasn't too long at all. That's so sad. I'm so sorry for your loss and your family. How do people feel about, I guess we can call them superstitions and things like that? How do people feel about that kind of thing? I'm slightly superstitious, but I don't like opening umbrellas inside, or like walking under ladders and stuff like that. I'd love to know who's suspicious. Okay, we're nearly there. So our last story today, while I apply my lip, is called Where's My Daughter? This happened 3 years ago. I used to live in a very small apartment. When you enter this apartment, the first thing you see was the living room, which was connected to a small hallway. To the right of the kitchen, at the end of the hallway, it was my room. To the left, and the bathroom to the right. That morning went like usual. I woke up, went to my living room where I used to drink my morning coffee. I usually did this before my daughter woke up. She was 1 year old at the time. I heard her cry and went to her room to get her. I walked that small hallway that connected everything. She always waited for me to open the door because she was too small to open it. When I opened the door, I didn't feel her on the other side of the door like other times. When I looked, she wasn't there. I looked on the bed and she was nowhere to be seen. I ran out to the living room and there she was, smiling at me like nothing happened. I cannot explain this. There is no way she could get there without me seeing her pass me. How did she get to the living room? I don't know how this happened. It's impossible. Oh, thank you. Kids being creepy even when they're not ghosts. That's a no from me. Oh. All right, guys, so this is our radium poisoning inspired look. One thing that was really kind of, I guess, funny but not funny because it led to death about radium poisoning is that girls who used to work in the radium factories would use radium almost like a modern day UV paint. So they would splatter their clothing with it to give off like a luminescence when they went out into the night. Going to bars and things like that. They would use it like in their hair, almost like a body glitter sometimes as well, because it gave off this incredible glow. I'm a radium girl. Ooh. Love it, love that. Little did they know how dangerous it actually was for their bodies. Like I said, I'll leave a link to all the products I used below. Thank you so much for joining me, and I want to thank June's Journey again for sponsoring this video today. Go ahead and check out that game. It's just such a nice, take time for yourself kind of game. Thank you so much for joining me again. Don't forget to send your ghost stories right here to this email. Which way do I usually do it? This way. And I will see you very soon. Bye.